Committee. My name is Ricardo Montoya. I am the Vice Chair of this committee and acting chair for today's meeting. When called on, applicants and speakers may come to the front podium to speak. Only one person at a time should come to the podium. Don't approach the podium until vacated by a previous speaker. Speak into the microphone, please, and identify yourself and provide your address for the record when you begin speaking. Address your comments, questions, and testimony to the committee and limit your comments to 3 minutes. It is unnecessary to repeat testimony previously given by others. Citizens may address the committee on agenda items by responding to chair's call for speakers during discussion on each item and signing the speaker's log on the podium. All comments must be relevant to the item. The chair or presiding officer may, in his or her discretion, prohibit a person from addressing the committee and/or remove that person from the council chambers if that person commits any disorderly or disruptive behavior. Please see the agenda for more information on these requirements. If you parked in the Sheridan Walker parking garage north of John Rex Elementary School or the Arts District parking garage immediately south of City Hall, staff can provide a parking validation ticket to you. The agenda and documents are located at https://okc.primegov.com/public/portal. You would then select the Riverfront Design Committee meeting, then click on an agenda item and the relevant documents will come up below the item. Keith, will you please call the roll?
Montoya.
Present.
Dean.
Present.
Howard.
Present.
Lyons. Postic.
Present.
Templeton.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Item 2A, approval of the April 6, 2023 meeting minutes. Okay, thank you, yes. Do we have a motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the April 6th, 23 meeting.
Second.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, who seconded the motion?
Lyons.
Motion passes. Item 2B, approval of the minutes for the May 4th, 2023 meeting. Do we have a motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the May 4th, 23 meeting.
Second. Howard.
Thank you. Motion passes. Item 3, cases withdrawn, there are none. Item 4, continuance requests, there are none. Item 5, consent docket, there are none. Item 6, cases for individual consideration, 6A, SRCA 23-00014 at 1125 Exchange Avenue.
This is in the Farmers Market District. Application by Jeff Burchell, Rebel Sign Company, LLC, for Josh Livingston, 1125 Exchange, LLC, to paint unpainted brick, paint brick, including painting over sign previously painted, remove sign on east facade, install sign on east facade, and install 2 signs on north facade. This is, again, in the Farmers Market area on Exchange, south of Reno. The property previously received a CA and also was granted a variance for signage in 2016 and 2017. They've since painted additional portions of previously unpainted brick on the building, as you can see in the images, and there's some exhibits in your packet as well showing what was painted at what point in time. In addition to the painting the previously unpainted brick, they've requested approval for 3 new signs on the building. The proposed signs meet all applicable guidelines and regulations for administrative approval, but are before you today because of the painting of the previously unpainted masonry. 2 of the signs are in an area, are on painted on brick that was previously painted. One of the signs is on the front that previously was not painted, and they had an attached wall sign. The concern with painting unpainted brick, as we talk about occasionally when these cases come before us, is both the aesthetic impact of masking brick detail, architectural features of the building, the original design and color and texture of the historic brick, as well as the potential physical impact that paint can have on unpainted masonry, trapping moisture inside, causing freeze-thaw, causing the brick to spall over time, creating kind of new maintenance issues for the building that would not have been there had the brick been left unpainted. We have seen, as different design review committees have reviewed unpainted brick, that sometimes we have asked applicants to document efforts to remove the paint and to either show that it can be successfully removed without harming the masonry, or to show that it's not feasible to remove the paint, and then the committees have approved the painting of the unpainted masonry as kind of the best case scenario for the continued use of the building and the health of the masonry structure. We have given you two options for a staff recommendation, or more than two actually, because the signs meet applicable guidelines and regulations. The signs themselves could be approved today, and the painting of the masonry either approved, verifying today that the committee believes that it's not feasible to remove the paint from the brick. That might be based on discussion with the applicant, information that they may provide, or continuing the painting of the unpainted masonry to allow for more documentation of the condition of the paint in the brick and feasibility of removal of the paint, or outright denial of the painting of the unpainted masonry. So that's what we've kind of laid out before you. I believe the applicant's present to answer any questions you may have, or any questions for staff.
I have a clarification question for staff. The photo that's in the handout with the reclaimed lumber sign and a flag, that is a historic sign in 2015. It looks like the photo was taken. That has currently been painted over?
So I believe the one on the front was attached to the building and has been taken down, and the building has been painted in that location. Yes. And then on the north, on the east side, that's been taken down. On the north, that was painted and did get approval and a variance for the size, and has since been painted over.
And when that was painted over, was that done with a CA? Did that
So
come
that was
before
done
this
without a CA, and that's what's before you now.
Okay.
So I have a question. So is the entire building painted in the black color now?
Yes. So I believe the signs have not yet been painted on the building, but the entire building has been painted the black color. And the
Okay.
proposal is to paint signs where you see the signs mounted now.
Okay. There was another slide that shows kind of the left side of the building. Okay, so that's been painted or not?
So that side is not painted, and I don't believe they intend to paint that side. And you can see there what the original brick finish was on the front and the side.
So is the question before us just painting signs on the brick that has already been painted with a solid black color?
So it's both painting the signs on the previously painted brick, and then it's also painting the rest of the masonry that previously was not painted.
Did you say that this view that we're looking at is not intended to be painted?
That's my understanding.
So which part?
So it would be the front of the building, which is the east facade, and the side of the building on the north.
Both of those appear to currently be painted.
Yes, so that was done, painting of both of those. Sorry, I should have said that all this work, all the painting has occurred without a CA, and so you're reviewing it as if it had not already occurred. If you look at
That's disappointing.
yeah, these are always tough when it comes in after it's already been done. One of your many attachments has a little diagram of what was previously approved to be painted and what was painted without a CA. Let me find which one that is. Okay, attachment C in your packet has hashed lines over the portion of the building that has been painted without a CA, that previously was not painted.
And the front, right?
Right.
So they're basically asking for forgiveness in a way.
Yes. And that's how, that's what our process is. When work has been completed without a CA, we review it as if it had not yet occurred. If it meets guidelines and regulations and can be approved, then no harm, no foul, we can approve it. But if it doesn't meet applicable guidelines and regulations, then we need to either identify justification for that, a unique circumstance for that, or ask the applicant to make changes to the proposal.
I have another question for staff. When murals are painted on buildings, are the artists generally providing documentation on the paint that they're using on to make sure that the brick remains breathable? I know that there are paints available that can do that.
So when we and Arts Commission review murals, they do include information about how the mural is going to be attached to the building, whether that's some other surface mounted on the building or how it's going to be painted on. And we typically, and Arts Commission typically, are not supportive of painting previously unpainted masonry, although those do sometimes get approved depending on the location in the building. But yeah, those are questions that get asked and things that get documented as part of that review process.
Excellent, thank you. Is the applicant here to speak on this item? If not, any other discussion or motion? Anyone from the public?
Templeton, I would like to move to continue the portion of the application for painting the unpainted brick with the condition that the applicant research methods to remove paint for the historic masonry and to provide documentation of those methods to the RDC prior to determining whether it is feasible to remove the paint.
I second that.
Motion passes.
So that addresses items 1, let me see. 1 and 2. We would need to either approve or also continue 3, 4, and 5.
Is it like one begot the other? Do we need to?
Katie, I see 3 options on staff recommendations,
Yep.
not 5.
So
Oh,
if
I
they
mean,
can
I
remove
meant
the
application item numbers. So we've got. So we would need to, so I believe you read motion 2B.
2B, correct.
So we would need to also do 2A to approve the portion of the application for installation of signs, or we would need to continue the installation of signs.
that was kind of, by making 2B, moving for 2B, does that not kind of continuance negate the need for approving the signage? Don't think we need to wait until we determine if it's feasible or not? Or do we need to go ahead and say, yeah, you can do it, but don't do it now until we determine whether or not it's feasible or not?
I think that continuing the whole thing is logical.
Okay. So do I need to move to?
So I think you could continue the portion of the application for installation of signs to A, except say continue instead of approve.
Okay. Templeton, I would like to move to continue the portion of the application for installing the signs.
And I second that.
Templeton, your vote, please.
I've not seen it pop up on
What was your vote?
there it is, okay.
Okay, motion to continue that item passes. Thank you. Item 7A, other business BOA-15375 at 101 Southeast 4th Street.
This is in the Regatta District, consideration and possible action on application by David and Box, WBFB, for Fred Mezzaheri, Lumberyard Development LLC, to provide a recommendation to Board of Adjustment regarding variances from parking lot regulations. We typically don't see standalone variances because they're usually associated with work that's being done and a certificate of approval. In this case, the intent is to not do any work to the site, so this is kind of a standalone variance. They are seeking to be able to continue use of this site as a parking lot without meeting the applicable guidelines and regulations for a surface parking lot in the design district. This includes standards for paving and parking stalls, as well as landscaping requirements, and these are all kind of itemized in your staff report. They have limited the request for the variance to a 3-year time period because the intent is to have this as a temporary use until the property is redeveloped in the future. And they have also indicated that they will install the required ADA parking stalls, which would be a requirement anyway in any case, but they've included that as part of the request for the variance, that would be completed. Installing the ADA stalls would require a certificate of approval that would come back for review and would give us kind of an opportunity to keep tabs on the 3-year time limit for the temporary use of the site. This is a property that had some buildings demolished several years ago and has just continued to be used as a parking lot since that time. And again, as I said, the applicant anticipates this site being redeveloped in the not so distant future and would like to be able to continue using it as a surface parking lot without making improvements to it. Staff's main concern with that is simply that we have other surface parking lots, temporary or not, that have met the applicable guidelines and regulations and brought them up to standard, even if they intend to eventually redevelop the parking lot and go to the expense of installing the parking lot, the landscaping, the paving, and then come back at a later date to build something more substantial on the site. So we are concerned about opening the door to allowing temporary parking lots to be installed and left unimproved. The 3-year time limit does help with that to some extent, that we have a cap on how long it would be able to remain in that use. So we have, again, given you a couple of options on a recommendation. And again, this is just a recommendation to Board of Adjustment to either recommend approval, or there's a language in there for a recommendation of denial as well. And the applicant is present to speak on this if you all have questions for the applicant.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee to staff?
The parking lot is being used on a for other things?
Yes, it is used. So it is adjacent to the Omni Hotel and Convention Center, to Paycom, to Bricktown, and is, I think, pretty actively in use as a parking lot currently.
So is this one of those $10 to pay or whatever?
I
Or
don't
is it
know
free?
what the structure of that is.
David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. So to answer your question, there are leases in place with Paycom Center and Levy Restaurants. Those were submitted as part of your packet. I don't know if they can be displayed or not. I've got a couple copies here. So the lot is primarily used for the employees of the restaurants and the Paycom Center. Paycom is obviously a very active center with both concerts, the Thunder and other events there. If you look at the letter, what Paycom says in their support of this application is the application will mitigate waste by deferring rather than eliminating pavement or development of this property. So we continued this to go meet with staff. After that meeting, we agreed to do the hardscape for the ADA, but we would prefer to not pave and put that limit of 3 years on it, so that when we go to develop it, we aren't just wasting all of the pavement and all the money associated with that. The main tenant is the Paycom Arena. Again, we were working closely with them to ensure that they were okay with it. They prefer this path. Our hope is that 3 years we'll have something developed on here and we will not have to go rip out all that concrete. So we'd ask for your recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment. Be happy to answer any questions.
I do have a question as far as, so is when Paycom utilizes the parking spaces, do they fill up the whole lot, or is it?
Yeah, depends on the event, but yes, it gets pretty full. It's Paycom through SMG, which is the managing entity of the arena. It's where all of the employees that make, any event come to life park.
Okay. So are you planning on doing anything for dust control or mitigate, from an air quality standpoint? As you've probably seen on gravel parking lots or dirt parking lots, there is dust when you have lots of traffic coming in and out. Is there any concern about that? Or?
So I think the code provides, DEQ certainly provides for measures to make sure that that's in control, and we don't intend to seek to vary any of those. So whatever those requirements are, we will adhere to them. Whatever the code requires. I don't know that number.
20%.
Okay, so yeah, whatever it requires, what we'll do, and again, we will pave that to meet code.
Have you tried to determine, based on the parking space square footage, based on a 5+ acre piece of land, how many that would be?
No, I mean, whatever the staff tells us we have to do is what we're going to do.
What if it was 180?
Well, then it'll be 180.
But it's currently has a lease with 2 different people. Probably the restaurant's probably more like for, not for employee parking so much as maybe for valet parking.
Correct, employees and valet. But it's where all the employees for the Paycom Center park.
So it's substantial. If there were a basketball game, there's going to be a lot of
Correct.
employees
Yeah,
parking.
or concerts or anything.
Mhm.
So, Laura, I have a question as far as, is this setting a precedent throughout the, this area of the city?
I don't know that I can say one way or the other if we've ever allowed this in a design district. I think, each case we review is unique and, particular to its site and to its conditions. I'm not aware of one where we've recommended approval of a variance to not require parking be brought up to standard. I know that we have had some parking lots in downtown that have been described as temporary or intended to be temporary that have come up to standard. So I'm not aware of any that have gone through this process to get a variance and not have to be not have to meet requirements, but I can't say for certain that it's never happened. So.
There are other parking lots certainly that are not concrete. They had to receive a variance. The Humphreys bill, where Humphreys used to be on Walker, I believe Bob Howard's operation is a gravel with the ADA spaces being concrete.
Thank you.
Do we have to do 3 years, or can we ask them to come back and, give it a variance for 1 year or 2 years, just depending if things change in the area?
So this is a recommendation to Board of Adjustment, so you can put whatever stipulations you deem appropriate in the recommendation. If you think 3 years is too long, you can say that, and Board of Adjustment will take that into consideration. You could tie it to the CA for the ADA parking, if that seemed more appropriate. I think the 3 years is what the applicant felt like was a reasonable time limit for them to use it and be able to redevelop, but you all can certainly put any other stipulations in your recommendation that you think are necessary.
I do think that 3 years is a decent amount of time, considering that it will take a while for drawings to be produced, permitting to be granted before you actually break ground and stuff. But since she brought that up, it made me wonder about, is there a time limit on when you will start the ADA parking?
Soon as, if we receive the variance, we'll move forward with application for CA for the handicap spaces.
Thank you. 3 years is a long in my opinion, the landscape of the area on the west side of Paycom is going to change in 3 years. So I am curious to see how this area continues to develop. And I know the Downtown Design Review District does review a lot of applications regarding everything from lighting and parking to new parking garages, and so I think there's kind of a wide spectrum as far as what they review and approve. So I just wanted to make that comment. I think I was curious, and so I looked into it, and I think there's about 27 applications in the last 3 years that they've reviewed, all considering different elements of parking lots around their district. So I thought I'd make that comment. But yeah, any additional questions or comments to the applicant or discussion items?
Templeton, I do have a question. Maybe John can help answer this one. Is there lighting requirements connected to the ADA parking requirements? Since you brought up the lighting, or you may know that too, Scott. Lighting, lumens, foot candles.
I'm not sure. I would presume that the Oklahoma City Boulevard has the roadway lighting. I don't know how much spillover ambient lighting comes from that.
I would think if it was an evening event and a handicapped person were parking there, they would need a lit path.
I think as long as whatever action we take affirms that the applicant follow relevant codes, that question will be addressed.
So the paving.
Yeah, the only item that we don't intend to meet code is the paving for the non-ADA spaces.
Yeah.
So lighting, anything else?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions?
Just one other question. So is the applicant actively developing ideas or looking at how they would like to develop the property?
So he's a significant stakeholder in various parts of the city. So he owns other things in Bricktown as well. So yes, he is actively engaged with developers that are bringing ideas. So he came up with a 3-year idea, believing that that is the time frame that he thinks the site will be relevant for a different type of development.
Thank you.
Templeton, I would like to move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment on the basis that the request does not comply with the intent of the scenic overlay Scenic River Overlay Design District zoning ordinance or the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C of the staff report, but may continue in a limited and temporary basis provided the 3-year time limit is proposed by the applicant and is observed, which will also include relevant code that goes along with the ADA parking requirements.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 7B, PUD 01922 at 3500 Southwest 15th Street.
So this is in the Meridian Gateway District. Consideration and possible action on application by Mark Zitzow, Johnson & Associates, the Oklahoma City Housing Authority and TSSO Land Development, LLC, regarding a request to rezone from R1 Single Family Residential District and R4 General Residential District to a planned unit development that would be developed in accordance with the C3 Community Commercial District regulations for commercial uses and the R4 General Residential District regulations for residential uses. So this is a request for a recommendation to the Planning Commission on a rezoning application to go, as I stated, from R1 and R4 to a PUD that would allow a mixture of uses, including residential and commercial uses. I should note that only a portion of the PUD is within the Scenic River Design District. The southern portion below Southwest 20th is not in the district. There are a number of things in the PUD that are changes to the current zoning. Obviously, items of note are allowing administrative approval for signs as they've been described in the PUD. The applicant has attempted to include sufficient documentation of proposed signage that it can be approved by staff, even though it doesn't meet our typical thresholds for what staff can administratively approve for signage in this district. The PUD would allow a number of uses by right that are currently conditional uses in SRODD. Those conditional uses have no actual conditions tied to them. They're just included in the code as a conditional use, so staff had no objection to that element of the PUD. Includes installation of signage and lighting that exceed what would currently be allowed, and setbacks and heights that exceed the requirements within Tract 1 specifically. Staff supports the proposals for the setbacks and height, for the pole lights that are proposed, and for the uses due to the proposed development on the property and its location. The northeast corner in particular is intended to be an on-queue gas station and convenience store. So given the location of the site in proximity to the highway and the intended use as an on-queue, all of those conditions seemed reasonable. On signs, 2 of the proposed signs exceed what is allowed under the current so-called billboard moratorium and would need to be reduced to 200 square feet or less to comply with that. In addition to that, other proposed signs are in excess of what is currently allowed by the district, which would be a maximum height of 10 feet, a maximum size of 50 square feet. And you can see in your packet, there is let me click to the right one. Site plan with sign locations gives you a sense of the number and size and height of the signs that are proposed specifically for the on-queue. We have recommended a recommendation of approval with the conditions that signs 3 and 4 be reduced to 200 square feet or less, and that consideration be given to reducing the height and size of the proposed freestanding signs. We didn't provide a specific height and size recommendation as part of our recommendation. We didn't go sign by sign and say they should be this size, they should be this height. The committee is welcome to go into more detail on any conditions you would recommend be attached to those signs or revisions, or you can simply include that more general language if you think it's appropriate to reduce height and size of the proposed signs. And you do have in your staff report more detailed list of each of the signs and the height and the size as currently proposed. But the applicant is present and can give you a more thorough overview of the scope of this project in general. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for me.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to present?
Sure. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. Here on behalf of the applicant, there are a host of folks from OnQ with us today, as well as Mark Zitzow. So what this application represents is a wonderful opportunity to net more affordable housing, and in so doing, remove buildings that I would submit that everyone up here would agree is in a bad location for housing. Right at a full interchange off an interstate highway is not the ideal location for affordable housing. So through various land swap transactions, OnQ and the Oklahoma City Housing Authority are going to exchange properties and allow the OnQ to be built right here at the hard corner, and then allow the net of approximately 80 new units to be built on the site. As staff said, it's a bit of a unique tract in that part of it is in the river overlay, part of it is not. When you think about this location, though, when you think about what use is appropriate there, we believe OnQ is that use. I'd be hard-pressed to find a gas station in the state of Oklahoma that does this product better than OnQ. They offer safe places, they're well-lit, and in this instance, will provide opportunities for people to walk and eat food or get items that they need. So there are a handful of things that, as staff pointed out, don't fit squarely within the guidelines because of the unique nature of this property. However, I think staff's opinion is what we have as well, that because of those unique circumstances, this development, in the way that we have it designed, makes sense. So in terms of the sign, we recognize that the moratorium is currently in place, although I disagree that the intent was to handle on-premise signs. It's been read to mean that on-premise as well as off-premise are impacted by that. So what we would ask is allow the sign heights that we and sizes have requested to be approved subject to the moratorium. And once the moratorium is lifted, then the sign sizes that we have proposed be allowed to be put in place. If you think about what this area has immediately across I-44 is a 50-foot tall, 672 square foot digital billboard that had to come before this committee, Planning Commission, City Council. So in terms of size and scale, which is typically the concerns we have, this sign fits within the context of what's there. In fact, it's much smaller than what exists immediately east of I-44. So if you've seen an OnQ, you know what the brand is, you know what the sign package looks like. They're always in scale, they're always very well done. This particular site sits low. If we aren't able to have a 50-foot tall sign, it becomes a bit of an issue with visibility. So the 50-foot is not just because we think that's what the max is, that's because that's what we really need based upon where the site sits. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions. We think this is a wonderful opportunity for both affordable housing and a gas station in an area that really has limited gas stations for miles. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the committee?
As I understand, the question before us is simply approving the PUD zoning and not any of the components within it, such as the gas station or the renovation of the community center or the housing. I assume those will be separate applications?
Right, the actual work to be done to the site, the new construction, renovations, demolition, all of that would come back to either staff or the committee for review when they submit for a certificate of approval. This does keep the property within the design review district. It's not seeking to remove it from the design district. So yes, this is just the zoning, the allowances for the signs, the setbacks, et cetera, and then everything else would come back through and be reviewed against those standards as part of a certificate of approval.
Thank you.
And I do want to touch on the setbacks, because that's maybe the one thing that is the biggest we don't meet. If you think about a gas station, if we were to meet the setbacks, I think it creates a much worse scenario for the residential that abuts us. Putting the pumps and the ugly side of the gas station up against residential, we think is a big mistake. So having the retail component or front-facing component up against the residential, we think is a better solution than having the pumps back towards the homes.
Templeton?
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted a clarification that this is voting on the PUD, the PUD also includes the signage heights. Is that true?
Right.
Right.
The PUD includes specific allowances for sign heights and size.
And then
Um,
once permit or before, when it becomes before us again for approval, we have already granted those heights, so we can't go back on heights.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I just had a general comment that I do agree that these are very well done facilities, very clean, and it does seem to be in a fuel desert, so.
Somehow I missed the large electronic sign across the street you were talking about.
So yeah, it's a billboard at, I think it's right at 15th and the highway. Wayne Knoll owned the property. It's currently occupied by Tyler Media, double-sided digital, 672 square foot billboard. Very pretty,
Very what?
pretty.
Pretty? A billboard? If I were to, Kay, if I were to make a motion, do I need to read off portion A too? I mean, I would think that once you make a motion or move to do the PUD itself, that is like a subset of the PUD, and so I wouldn't have to read off all the 1A portion.
So that 1A, that paragraph about the signs, is optional. If you all are comfortable with the height and size as proposed, then you don't need to include that. And if you're comfortable with the applicant's suggestion that the 200 square foot signs are allowed subject to the moratorium, then you don't need to read any of that off.
So explain to me moratorium. I mean, I know what it is, but is there one in place?
There's one in place for signs over 200 square feet that was put in place by council. So what they're asking for is that when that moratorium expires,
Right.
then these signs would be allowed.
Okay, so would I still have to read the 1A portion if I'm agreeing to wait out the moratorium?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we would, and there was some confusion in the staff report, it's one pole sign.
It's the
It's the pole sign that would be right here.
major one.
Closest to I-44. Everything else is either a monument or on canopy or on facade. And the problem with the moratorium is it was passed by council in response to various billboards that have been approved across the city. The language, with all due respect to the city attorney's office, is a bit generic and read literally also limits accessory signs, even though there was no complaint at the genesis of the moratorium for accessory signs. So the problem we face is 200 square feet is just not a lot of square footage, especially on an interstate where people are driving 80 plus miles an hour. So what we're asking to do is approve our signage as submitted with the provision that the moratorium, while it's in place, will control, and we'd be limited to the 200 square feet. At some point, that moratorium will be lifted, and the new sign code will be passed, and we're confident that a commercial tract along an interstate will have signage consistent with what we have here.
Can you clarify your comment? You said there was just one sign that you're asking for, but it appears that there's two, one that's 30 and one that's 50 feet?
There's one pole sign.
One pole sign.
Yeah, just the one pole sign. Everything else is a monument style or attached sign.
And the monument sign is currently allowed at 30 feet?
Yes. This is the monument, and even it is 37.5 feet above the 200 square foot moratorium limit. So we'll make that work at 200 until such time that it's not, and then same thing with the pole sign.
So currently, River has a height maximum of 10 feet
That's
and a
what I was
size
thinking.
maximum of 50 square feet, which we recognize for a use like this and a location like this is pretty restrictive. So, yeah.
Okay, so you are asking for a variance on both of those two signs, not just the pole.
Well, it's not, I mean, in theory, yeah, it's not really a variance because it's a PUD, so we're crafting our own ordinance. So we're asking for something in a PUD that the guidelines and regulations don't allow for, given the unique nature of the site.
Attorneys are great with words, thank you.
You know? Spend a lot of money and go to school a long time to use words.
Thank you for clarifying.
And so the bottom line is, even those two signs will stay as within the guide, will meet the guidelines until the moratorium is lifted.
It'll be subject to the moratorium. Until
Katie-
such time that.
Katie, I have another clarification question. Assuming this application is approved subject to the moratorium, as you suggested, in the future, the moratorium may be lifted and replaced with an updated sign code. That's what the city is currently planning. If the updated sign code does not permit these two signs that are being requested, would they still be allowed if we approve this application today after the moratorium is lifted?
Well, I mean, the way that we have couched this application, yes, because again, it's a PUD.
Okay.
So this, once the moratorium is lifted, would be what would be approved.
Okay. Thank you.
One more thing, I feel like the level of this site is lower than is it 44?
Correct.
It's lower.
Yeah. That's why the 50-foot height is needed, because at 40 feet, even, the sign becomes almost completely obstructed.
Templeton, I would like to move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission on the basis that the project complies with the intent of the Scenic River Overlay Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in the section C and D of the staff report.
Katie, may I make a proposed addition to that motion? I'm not sure how this works legally. Help me out here.
You would make a separate motion if you want to differ from what she moved.
Is that the only way to go about this?
What is your addition?
Might I suggest that you add to your motion, Dana, pending the current moratorium and the future sign code, which may replace the moratorium?
You want to add that to your motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Then I would second that motion.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 8A, administrative report, approval reports. Sorry.
We have a number of administrative approvals listed here. You're welcome to ask questions about those, or anytime reach out to staff if you have questions about things that are being administratively approved. These are available online as they go through the process. So, but nothing in particular to call out on any of those. And no additional comments from planning department staff if you all don't have questions on the AAs.
Any comments from committee members?
Oh, we did not.
Be the next meeting.
Do we need to go back and amend that motion
No, if
to
it's
include a
continued.
specific date? we normally specify, but we can just,
If you continue it, it automatically goes to the next meeting date.
okay, all right. So we'll just, because they didn't specify. Okay.
Any comments from the public to the committee?
Could you come to the microphone so we can hear you? Thank you.
My name's D'Angelo Jones. I was supposed to be here for the first item. I'm just checking. I don't know. I got lost.
Sure. So that item was continued with the request that the applicant pursue methods to remove paint from the brick, from the previously unpainted masonry. And it would be continued to, let me check the meeting date. It would be July 6th, Thursday, July 6th. So it'll be heard again on that day.
Okay, and then.
And if you want to reach out to staff to, have you been working with Laura? Okay, if you'll reach out to her about what you need to provide, or to me, I'm Katie, between now and that meeting. But I think the consensus was to at least attempt to remove the paint from the previously unpainted masonry, or confirm that it's not feasible to remove the paint.
Okay, I have already tried that.
Okay.
And they did not. They didn't. I wasn't around when they did this to the building, but I have a construction company, so I understand what the issue is. But how they painted that brick, it's not. You can't, or will chip it. It'll start chipping some parts with the pressure you have to do.
Well, I think maybe between now and that next meeting, we can get with you on what you could provide to demonstrate that to the committee, and come back with that information.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you.
Oh, can you tell us, sorry, did you say your name and address for the record?
D'Angelo Jones, 1125 Exchange.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Our next meeting date is Thursday, July 6, 2023. New applications were to be submitted by staff at 4 p.m. Tuesday, May 30th, 2023, yesterday. Revisions and information on continued projects are to be submitted by June 6, 2023. And with that, we are adjourned.